Alright YouTube, so we're back of course to talk about some Square Enix. If you've been on the internet the past week or so, I'm pretty late to this story, you've probably seen the NVIDIA GeForce NOW leak that had, I think it was like 18,000 plus games on it. GeForce NOW is NVIDIA's cloud gaming service, and given the amount of games on this leak, I don't even know what all's out there and on this list, but when it comes to this channel, we're of course focusing on the Square Enix / Final Fantasy games. As of right now, what I'm aware of are 4 Final Fantasy games that were on this leak, and 2 of them are pretty obvious, one being the Final Fantasy VII Remake PC port, I guess, coming to GeForce NOW. That one's pretty obvious. We've talked about that port of this game for so long at this point. The other one is Final Fantasy 16, which isn't surprising at all because it's a timed exclusive for PS5 or whatever, and you wouldn't have a timed exclusivity unless the game was coming to other platforms. So I don't think anybody's surprised at hearing a Final Fantasy 16 port. I don't know when it would come out. I don't know if we even know how long 16 is supposed to be PS5 exclusive, but it's not a surprising leak or reveal or whatever. The other 2, however, are quite interesting. The first one being a Final Fantasy Tactics Remaster, which was a bit surprising to me at first because I was thinking War of the Lions was a remaster, but looking at gameplay, it seems like it's pretty visually similar to the original PlayStation version. I could be wrong there. I know they added new content to the game. I know you could use Balthier from Final Fantasy 12, stuff like that. They added cutscenes, and maybe the cutscenes even had voiced lines. I don't remember exactly. It's been a long time since I played the game. But I guess technically War of the Lions wasn't a remaster, so it actually makes a lot of sense that they would want to remaster that game eventually. This is actually a series of Final Fantasy games that I have an admiration and fondness for. I played the first one a lot as a kid. I had it on probably my PS2 is how I played it. But I was terrible at it. I think you get up to a certain point where you start to fight the summoners or something in the game, and I just could not beat them. They were beating my ass. I never beat that game. But Tactics Advance, for the Game Boy Advance, I played the absolute hell out of. This was a game that me and 2 of my buddies religiously played during our Game Boy Advance SPs. We talked about it all the time. We shared tips and stuff like that, and eventually battled each other and all the stuff that you could do with this game. But this was also my first step into the world of Ivalice, and my first run-in with the character of Mont Blanc, who eventually does appear later in Final Fantasy 12. And when I first came across him, it blew my goddamn mind. I'm seeing a character from a different Final Fantasy game, and that's where I learned that Ivalice has a bigger picture to it. It's not just one world in one game. There's several games that take place within this world. So I've always had a fondness for this series of games and the setting and the gameplay itself of Tactics with the grid style isometric view and there's terrain and stuff like that. It's so interesting, so different from the usual turn-based system of Final Fantasies at the time. So I personally look forward to a Final Fantasy Tactics Remaster. When I think about that game, the first thing I picture is the Nintendo Switch. It just seems to make sense. But hopefully it would come to other platforms as well. It's a very old school style game, so I don't know how often we get games like that on modern consoles. It makes a lot of sense on Switch. But either way, I'd be looking forward to this. This is a game I need to beat eventually, because I never beat it on PlayStation back in the day. It kicked my ass. When I had it for PSP as kind of a teenager, I don't think I ever beat it either. I don't even know how far I got into it. So it's a game that I've just never fully beat. And somewhat recently, within this year, I bought War of the Lions for PSP, got home, and my PSP just, the screen was fucked on it. I don't even know what happened. It was literally sitting in a box. The box hadn't been moved. There was nothing heavy in the box, but I fired it up, and the screen was just fucked. And so I couldn't even play it, so I just own a copy of War of the Lions right now that I can't even use. So I'd love to get a remaster that I can officially play finally. The other game on this list, however, I think is objectively more interesting, and it's a Final Fantasy IX Remake. Yeah, you heard me correctly, remake, not a remaster, so potentially in the same vein as what they're doing with FF7R, which would be, depending, could be fucking fantastic. 9 is one of my favorite Final Fantasy games. One of my favorite games of all time. It's top 2 or 3 when it comes to the Final Fantasy games. I'm not exactly sure where. I'd never know past FF7 what exactly are my favorites, but 9 is up there, dude. This is one of my favorite games ever. So I'd absolutely embrace a remake of FF9, but that being said, I don't think it really needs it. I think the art style of this game is absolutely beautiful. I don't think anybody's really asking for it. I've said in the past, though, that this is probably the one I would want, just personally, because we looked at an interview, and Katase had mentioned that if he had the choice to remake another Final Fantasy, his personal choice would be 5, and I believe in that video I said that mine would be 9, but I don't think it needs it. I just want it. And when it comes to Final Fantasy IX and its unique art style, if they were to do a remake, I don't know how you do it. Because do you go the realistic-looking route like Final Fantasy VII Remake's going? Because if they went that route, with the way these characters look at 9, it'd be a fucking horror show. It's fucking terrifying. There's also, of course, the conversation of gameplay. They wanted to modernize Final Fantasy VII with Remake, given it the action-style gameplay. Would they go the same route with 9, and would that be enjoyable? I don't know. I like it in Remake. I don't know if I'd like it in a 9 Remake. So there's obviously a lot of questions and speculation, and that's really what it is at the end of the day. Speculation. It is just a leak. Obviously, I don't like to do it in my videos, but, you know, take it with a grain of salt. You guys know this. It's a leak. You don't need to... It's not 100% true until it's proven to be true. What is interesting, however, is that we've seen them recently show love to Final Fantasy IX because we did a video about it a couple months back. They're, like, randomly making an anime for 9. It's out of nowhere. Like, a game that they don't really show a lot of love to. So maybe it's possible, my dudes. I mean, the anime announcement came out of nowhere, so maybe they're also working on a remake for this game. People have also pointed out that even though it does say remake, maybe it means like the remastered version that's already out and on like pretty much every platform at this point, which is also a possibility. What we do know, however, is that NVIDIA has confirmed the leak and list to be legitimate. It's real. But they claim that a lot of the titles on the list are speculative. Which is certainly an answer, but why would they speculate a Final Fantasy IX remake? Like, there's not even like a hint of a murmur of a rumor of that even being a thing, so why would they have that in their database? It's just so... It doesn't make any sense, right? When it comes to the Final Fantasy games that were a part of this leak, I think, obviously the 7 and 16, like PC ports, 100% happening eventually. That's not even like a speculation thing. I think the Tactics Remaster is very, very likely. Probably Switch, maybe other platforms as well. The 9 remake, I just don't know how likely that is. As much as I want it, I would be all over that if that came out. I don't know like why they'd be remaking the game. It doesn't really have like the rabid fan base and appeal that like 7 does. Like 7 remake makes sense, right? As much as some people are against it, it makes sense on paper. Again, I don't even know why they're doing a 9 anime, though I'm going to be all over that shit too. I did say, I believe with our last video that we talked about, you know, Square Enix being at Tokyo Game Show, that I think they're gearing up for something big, right? They have a TGS showcase, but also they're doing a Square Enix Presents there, and most of like the games that we're aware of are going to be a part of the TGS show, and not the Square Enix Presents. So they got to be gearing up to show something big, and maybe some of this is a part of that. I think the one that makes the most sense would be the Tactics Remaster, but who knows? So, of course, I want to pass off to you guys. When it comes to this leak, mostly focusing, of course, on Tactics and Final Fantasy IX Remake, like, how likely do you think those are? And also, if they do come out, like, what platforms are they going to be on? Are you guys going to be interested in those games? Other than dudes, that is the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you guys only want to see more Square Enix, Final Fantasy IX Remake, Tactics Remaster news. Turn on notifications. Follow me on Twitter, dashingdavidYT. I'm a Discord. Links to my social networks are in the description and in the outro. Later, guys.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Rogaine, or leave it like Cobain.